In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a pretty fun fingerpicking song, and a song you can play some leads along to as well. Can't Find My Way Home, which came from the 1969, the only album that Blind Faith put together. Now, Blind Faith came together with a bunch of already established stars and was one of the first super groups, or a term that was coined probably a little bit later. But it was a whole bunch of established stars from previous bands. Eric Clapton had been in Cream, Steve Winwood had been with Traffic, Ginger Baker, of course, had been part of Cream as well, and Rick Gretsch, the bass player, had been in an English band called Family. Well, this supergroup thing kind of, caught on later. There were many other ones: Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Who knows? Seals and Crofts. That's probably reaching a little bit, maybe. Anyway, a lot of supergroups that became popular in the 70s in particular. But Blind Faith was one of the first. And this album, they again only made one album, and it had mostly songs written by Steve Winwood. And this one is one of the few albums that Eric Clapton played acoustic guitar on. Up until this point, of course, this predates his Unplugged stuff by about 25 years, I guess. And he played steel. They actually had two nylon string guitars in the recording of this. And what we're going to do in this lesson is look at not worrying about playing it note for note exactly the way it went, because you can find dozens of recordings of this, or especially videos of even Steve and Eric playing it, that are completely different. Sometimes it's a little rockier, sometimes Steve plays the acoustic or the rhythm guitar part with a pick, just strumming through the chords on an electric guitar even. So what I want to be able to do in this lesson is establish an arpeggio type pattern going on here that is a little bit random, just getting through the chords. So you could almost just strum through the chords and pick out and sing the song, and it would sound fine. Then we're going to talk about playing leads over an interesting chord progression, because it's got a lot, it changes keys a couple times. So we'll be talking about playing leads using a mixolydian scale and a minor scale, and I'm going to modify them a little bit because we're going to end up using not even all 7 notes of those scales, but we're not going to reduce it quite to a pentatonic. You can probably figure out. We're probably going to use mostly 6 notes. 6. So that's what's going to happen here in Can't Find My Way Home. And it's a perfect song to practice jamming along to as well. And so I'll have a play-along segment at the end where I'll just play the chords fairly slowly so that you can practice playing your leads along with it as well. So that's all coming up. Really interesting things to talk about in the theory of these chords and what's running through the lead player's head. And we'll get into that in the next chapter as we start looking at some of the theory. But let's get into the lesson on Can't Find My Way Home. In Can't Find My Way Home, we're going to play first of all in drop D tuning. So you have to get your 6th string tuned down to D, an octave below the open 4th string. A few different ways to do that, but the main thing is rely on your ear or your tuner to make it happen. But the harmonic at the 12th fret of the low D string has to sound the same as the 4th string open. In this drop D tuning, this is used commonly to play songs in the key of D. Now, that gives you a completely different sound to a D chord than you have if you don't have this low D in the bass. It gives it this big, beefy, slightly out of tune sound. So it changes the character of a lot of the chords in the key of D, although D is really the main one that gets changed, but it does change a lot of fingerings for chords. So when I state the character, the sound of the D chord is quite different because of the low D. Most of the rest of the chords sound the same, but you have to finger them differently to make up for the 6th string being tuned down to D. We have some scary looking names for chords on the chart, but they're all mostly pretty easy to play. So we're going to be playing our D chords in our standard D fingering, but we're also going to be including the 6th string as part of that. Now the chord we're calling C add 9 is done most of the time throughout the whole sequence here. Your 3rd finger is just going to stay on the 2nd string at the 3rd fret. So for our C add 9, all we do is go to C in the bass with our 2nd finger. with your right hand here is actually try to get a little random about about what you're going to play, with a couple of very specific guidelines. Now, the guidelines are going to be that your thumb is going to play on the 5th and 4th strings for most of the chords, and or the 6th and 4th, depending on the chord. So, in the first measure, if we look at the tablature on the duet version, the part that is 6 pages, now this is sort of a note-for-note transcription, but you can see that if I were to play exactly what's in the first measure, I'm going to be using 2 fingers most of the time because I'm very rarely even going to hit the first string. And so my middle finger is going to play the 2nd string, my index finger is going to play the 3rd string, and then my thumb is going to be using 2 bass notes per chord generally. So when I'm on the C add 9, I would be hitting the first note with my thumb, and then getting used to this little roll where I'm going with my middle finger to my index, and then the thumb comes in again on another bass note and has a little alternating. Okay, get out the 6-page tablature version that is the duet version, pretty much note for note the way Steve and Eric played this, and throw it away. We're not going to learn it like that. I want to teach you instead how to, you're welcome, by the way, to look at that and work on it as much as you like, note for note. But what we really want to be able to do is make up our own accompaniment using the same chord progression, of course, and then learn a little bit about improvising a lead over those chords. So as I talked about in the right hand section, you really just have to keep a steady flow of 8th notes going, although frequently a quarter note on the first beat would be a good thing. Well, in the last segment, I told you to throw away the tablature. Now, go dig it up, because I do want to talk about some things. I want you to take a look at some things that happen in there. And what we're going to talk about is the lead part more than anything else. And that is, we have to change modes or scale patterns in this a couple of times according to what the chord progression is doing. So this would be a good time to look at what Eric Clapton played, the top part of the duet version. We're only going to really look at like the first 2 lines, just so you can see what's happening. And then also have the page out of mine that just shows the chord progression and the mixolydian and minor scales. I'm going to play through the chord progression for a couple minutes, and you can experiment with playing a lead, or you can experiment with playing along with me. I'm going to have got the metronome set at 80, and I'm just going to keep running through the verse. We're not going to go into the chorus or anything in here. Think about your D major or your D mixolydian and minor scales, and the real big difference is whether you're going to use F sharp or F. Maybe I'll give you some hints every once in a while, but you can almost think about using the F sharp for the first 4 measures and the F natural for the next 4. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to try to sing along on this and see what happens. I have never sung this song before, but I've listened to it a few times. Now, Steve Winwood, of course, has a great voice. I might be able to do this an octave lower. We'll see what happens. This would be, if this works out, this would also be a good time for you to practice playing the lead along at a little higher speed. So I'll run through it instrumentally once, and then see what happens.